Hello and welcome to the Green Profit Academy Pros podcast. This show digs into the challenges in growing a lawn care and landscape business while maximizing your profit. I'm Christeen
And I'm Steve Bousquet. We are the green industry experts in profit, growth, and leadership. Hello, Christeen. How are you doing today?
I am doing good. It's a good day for a good day today.
Yeah, after 4th of July is when we're recording this. I don't know when you're going to be listening to it, but what a nice 4th of July weekend we had in New England. It was a little rainy and some of the fireworks got postponed, but then the clouds and the sky just, cleared up and people are like, why do they postpone it? But they have to make those decisions early on. And part of those decisions take some leadership, and you have to live with the consequences because you're trying to serve all the members of your community that are going to be attending those fireworks. And so they're just going to be postponed to this Friday. So I'm excited about this podcast because it's going to be going over one of my favorite topics, which is leadership. So in today's episode, we're going to deep dive into various aspects of leadership in today's rapidly changing world, right? I mean, just today compared to pre-COVID, compared to 20 years ago, completely different societies, different worlds that we're living in. In today's episode, we're going to go explore the critical topics of how to start building a leadership team, how to start building your leadership team. And building a strong and cohesive leadership team is crucial for any organization to thrive and meet its goals.
Yes, I would completely agree with that statement. And I know, Steve, you and I have been on the building a leadership team journey for many years. And it has really helped us understand not just how our business functions, like with its rhythm, but what our business needs, and then what we need as well as leaders. So I think it'd be great for us to just dive in and start talking about why is it so important for any company to build a leadership team?
Right. And today, hopefully, we're going to take some of the mystery out of what leadership is and what a leadership team does and what they serve, right? So the main point today in this section we're going to talk about is a leadership team serves as the very backbone of the organization. They set the strategic direction and create a positive work culture and drive innovation. And the main function of that leadership team is to serve the mission, vision, and purpose of the company. And the strategy is how they get things done.
Yeah. So our leadership team, we're very intentional about having them involved in our strategic planning. And it wasn't something that we always did, but we did share like our numbers and some of our plan and our, mission, vision, and purpose with our team. We would go over it quarterly with all of the team members. But now we have certain people in the company that are very specific that we call our leadership team. And it's about, 3 to 4 roles. And of course, I'm included in that role. And I'm, the visionary. I'm the one who creates the vision, says this is the direction we're going to go. And one of the things I really love to do is create a strategic plan. And I share that plan with our team. So we take the time out in the company, day to day, and we meet on a regular basis and we talk about the strategic plan. And the team members contribute to that strategic plan, and they give their insights, and they also will create some of that plan. So if we have somebody who's in marketing, they will bring the marketing plan to the table, and they say this is something that we have, this is what we're doing. We have our culture piece to it. How are we designing our culture and being intentional about our culture? And then we have all of our KPIs, like our key performance indicators, and we let the team give feedback on those and update us on where things are at. So we know, how are we going to get there, what's being done, and then what's going to be the outcome of what we're doing. So the leadership team contributes to that. And the nice thing is we're not doing it by ourselves. So I'm not doing it by myself. And this has been the huge game changer in, my business and even with some of the clients that we work with.
So, you're referring to strategic plans, and, so people are like, what? Is it okay? Is it revenue driven? What's the strategic plan? So really it's about the five functions of business, right? It's about marketing, sales, deliverables, the finance, how are we going to manage our finances and why are we going to manage it that way? And then people, and, you mentioned culture. So those are the five functions of business. And there has to be a strategy in each one of those functions. And the goal, every year can be has to be financial, but it can't only be financial. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
having one big goal of growth or stability or realignment, whatever that is, then your marketing, your sales, your deliverables, your finances, and your people have to support that major goal. And making that aware to the entire company is a big part, because even though our top management or our top leaders might be three or four that are the followers of our visionary, right? Those three or four leaders are showing everyone else in the company how to follow and why it's important. What's the goal? What's the mission, vision, and purpose? Why are we doing this? Why is it meaningful? So those three or four, the first followers have a huge role, because the visionary isn't even a leader until they have followers. They're just the lone visionary. So those
Right.
first three or four followers, leaders that you mentioned, are so vital to the entire organization, and because they show everybody else how to follow and where we're going.
Yeah, and I would completely agree with, until you have followers, you're a lone leader. And because I have been there in the company, and one of the symptoms that I felt to know that that was true was I felt like I was carrying the entire company up the hill on my back by myself. The vision. I'm like, this is our vision, guys. Here's our immutable laws. These are our core values. This is direction we're going. These are the key performance indicators we have to hit. And it was just me doing all the work. And I took a pause several times and I'm like, why am I the only one doing this? So I'm sure there's some of our listeners out there have experienced this or are currently experiencing this, to where you feel like you're carrying the entire business up the mountain on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. And a strong leadership team ensures effective decision making, and facilitates collaboration, provides guidance to the rest of the organization. And they do that. They do that. The visionary doesn't do that. That leadership team moves that throughout the organization. And when you have your leadership team engaged, and that is when the company can make progress. You can only do so much. You can only make so much progress if you're the lone person moving the needle and pushing that rock up the hill. And so without a capable and aligned leadership team, it becomes challenging for any organization to adapt, change, or grow. And
Right.
you'll wear the visionary out. The visionary will become exhausted.
Right. Yeah. And I have felt that um, just over the years, to where I'm like, how do I get everybody, to buy into this? And it really was that, that first follower. And then they're out there walking the talk and, speaking the language. And then the next person comes in and they're also doing it. And what I saw change in the business is when, our ability to scale and grow changed rapidly, because it wasn't just me driving the bus. It was, I had multiple people on board. And then the other thing that I noticed, and you mentioned this, is that ability to adapt to change. We, almost like a flock of birds, like we could change direction very fast together. And we knew, just because of our culture and, kind of the rules of how we function, what needed to come with us, like what wasn't changing, but then how could we, make these little shifts and changes and adapt, to the growing company or the demand of our clients, our customers, and the services that we provided. So I think these points are in line with, like, why is a leadership team so important? It allows you to adapt. It allows your company to scale and grow. And it also allows you to have this council of effective decision making and strategic planning and action taking place where it's not just the owner doing it all by themselves.
Yeah, and how many times have we heard, I wish I could hire somebody that thinks like the owner, that thinks like me. And the challenge with that is we really need people who can think like leaders and embrace their leadership and let them, you know, excel from that point, not necessarily think like us. You know, my chief operating officer, Chris, I tell him, you know, if we agree on everything, one of us is not needed. So I don't need him to think like me. I need to show up with his talents, his strengths, and contribute as he does in his leadership role. My office manager, you know, she has very different talents and strengths than I do, but as part of that leadership team, now we're becoming stronger. It's not just that one thought lane that I think in, and I miss stuff because I'm only thinking from my perspective. So I don't want people to think like the owner. I want people to think like themselves and allow that leadership talent to show up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know, we've talked a lot about the strengths leadership as well. And I love the idea of utilizing that in the company. And it's something that we added in with our, starting with our leadership team and then trickling down is using, the Clifton strengths concepts to really understand our leadership team and where they could best show up.
Yes, when using the Clifton strength and knowing what everyone's talents and strengths are, and then aligning their role in the company to meet those talents and strengths, now you have it's like a superpower. It's like a super team, and people start showing up with a lot more engagement. They start bringing their talents that we never knew we weren't aware that they had, or they might have not have been aware, and giving them the time and space to use those talents and strengths. But the Clifton strength, it just reveals, their top 10, all the way through 34 talents. And when you get past the 10, it's not that you don't have any talent in that category, it's just that they're lesser strength. But what we're really looking for in the Clifton strengths is like, what is their theme? Like, are they executing? Are they influencing strategic thinking or relationship building? And we want to really kind of make sure that they can grow and express themselves through their talent theme and support the leadership role that they have in the company with those strengths.
Yeah. And one of the things I've learned through our Clifton Strengths coaching and our leadership team is it's our job as a leader to build a culture of high engagement.
Yeah, that's the entire responsibility of the management team and leadership team is to build a culture of high engagement in the company. And that's, making sure that people know what's expected, that they have the time, that they're heard, that they're recognized, that they have a best friend at work, that people are encouraging their development. So a leader isn't really about how good can I look. It's about serving the mission and the members, the employees and team that serve that mission and allowing their natural strengths and talents to show up. It's kind of an incredible thing to watch when people show up and are respected and honored for being who they truly are. People don't know what to do with that at first. Some of my new team members are like, wait, what's this? I've never been recognized for who I am and what I can actually bring. And it can be a little bit daunting at first for people, but once they realize, like, oh, this is real. I can be me, show up with my strengths and talents. They're not here to fix me. This management team, this leadership team is actually here to recognize what I'm really good at. And I use the football analogy. The field goal kicker might only go on the field in a football game a few times, but he is so important when he's on that field. That's his talent and strength. Is kicking that football through the uprights, for extra points and for field goals. So his job is not to tackle. It's not to block linebackers. So it's a very specific talents that can add a tremendous. That's how you win and lose games in football, whether it's high school, college, or pro. Having the talent in the right place.
Yeah. And I think, understanding your team and how they can show up is extremely important. I want to dig into, the process of building a leadership team and what that looks like, because understanding the importance is one thing. A lot of us could be sitting out there going, I know it's so important, but I don't know how to do it. So I think unpacking, the importance of defining their roles and their responsibility, which does tie as well to like their strengths. It helps connect those pieces and, how crucial it is for organizations to clearly define these roles. And I feel like in some ways, like, yes, we're talking about roles and we're talking about responsibility, but what we're really talking about is expectations and making sure kind of like that third piece is thrown in there of, yeah, let's define their roles and let's define their responsibilities, but let's also talk about the expectations that we have as business owners or even as managers when it comes to these roles and responsibilities.
Yeah, so one of the first rules of leadership is being easy to follow, right? And what does easy to follow mean? It means clear expectations, and it also means supporting people to make sure that they have time, resources, tools, knowledge to finish and complete those expectations. That's what being easy to follow, right? Hey, this is where we're going. This is what we're doing. This is what we're going to do when we get there. This is when we have to be done by. This is when we have to show up, and really just being clear about the expectations. And that goes back to that mission, vision, and purpose. And we can have like an org chart and a role chart, and it's very, you can line that up kind of like this is the role, this is the responsibility of the role, but allow their talents and strengths to fulfill the responsibility of the role and not mold and meld people around like this is how the last person did it. So you have to do it exactly like that. We're going to have much more engagement and things are going to get done with higher quality and much more efficient. If we say, hey, this is the mission of that role. This role's mission is this. Now let's line up your talents and strengths to complete that mission. And people will step right into that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, and I was just having a conversation with somebody about this morning, is really defining the expectations and their responsibilities and what their role is. It avoids us not knowing as business owners and as leaders or even as managers, one, it establishes that accountability piece, but two, it avoids our, I think lack of confidence would be the right word when it comes to somebody not following through with their roles, responsibilities, and expectations. When we put that in place, we don't have to question, is this person really doing their job? Are they really showing up the way that I need them to or that the team needs them to? And then the second, once that starts happening, then the question pops up of, well, now what do I do about it? And I really haven't met many business owners or managers who enjoy difficult conversations, right, to correct that.
Yeah, and what's great about kind of with Clifton strengths, it's one of those things that I've learned through coaching people and working with teams and building teams around Clifton strength is that most people can do about 80%, but they lack 20% of the ability to complete a certain job or even a project because it's not in their strengths. So sometimes it'll look like they're procrastinating, they don't care, they're not engaged. And what happened really was their strength tank is empty, just like a gas tank. It is out of they're out of gas, they're out of strength. So really saying who's on my team, who can be on my team with this project or this task, and then lining up or matching up with someone in the organization or the team that has talents that complement them. And then things really get done fast because you have two highly engaged people. One person's going to carry the project to this point, and the other person's going to finish it. Or we have people who are great starters. They're going to get things going and they're going to hand it off to the finishers. And when you have teams, that 80-20% team in a company, that's when you see teams and companies really grow. It's when we have silos, is when we have like lack of communication. People will struggle to get things done. So it's kind of a tell if people aren't getting projects done on time, or if the quality is not high enough, they need someone else on their team, and that then you have double kind of like people holding each other accountable. Like, hey, I'm really good at that. I'm personally really good at getting projects going and concepts and ideas. I'm not a finisher. I need people on my team who can do all the details and finish it. So, people know that. And then they look forward to, okay, Steve's going to come with this project and I get to be the finisher. And then, we can go back and celebrate the win because it supported part of our mission. So that's so
Yeah.
powerful, understanding who needs to be on your team.
And I think too that understanding when you say, and I know this because I've worked with you so much, you say, I'm a starter, I'm not a finisher. And there are so many areas where you're like a starter of like 5 or 10% of something, and then somebody will pick it up and they'll move it all the way down, and get it finished, or they'll create the whole. You're like, I have this idea. And so I know with you, like that's your version of I'm a starter, but with other people, their version of a starter is like, they're like, I'm going to get it 30% or 40% done, and then I'm going to kick it off to them. Like, so I think really defining the expectations and understanding their strengths and what words they're using to describe their abilities and their skill sets as well is great to know, because I know if I didn't know this about you, and if I didn't know this about some of my other team members, I would be frustrated. And I'd be like, oh, here's one more thing that I'm being handed to do, or why
Yes.
didn't they do this? But because I know that, and I know how, what your skills are, and, where you kind of really live in your greatness and what you do, I know what to expect, and I'm not frustrated or disappointed when you're like, here, Christine, catch this. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is totally a Steve thing. And I've got to, take it from that 10% to the 90%. And then I have my team that does the other 10%. So
Yes. So, right. So my starter is, hey, I have this idea. Who would be the best person to take this and run with it? That's the idea. So it's like, okay, what is it for? What is it going to serve? What is it going to do? And now who can get that done? I've told people I don't do things. People are like, oh, all you have to do is this, that, and that. I'm like, well, I don't do things. Like, I make sure other people do the things that need to get done, who have the
mhm.
talent, whether they have achiever or strategic thinking. My main theme is 6 out of my top 10 Clifton strengths are influencing. So I don't have executing. I think I have one executing, and I'm just not the person that does the things. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how I get so many things done. Is because I'm not stuck in the weeds on it. I hand it off to people who have the skills, talents, and knowledge to do it. Now, one of the other things is I'm great at giving people, the accolades and the kudos for doing all the work.
hmm
And I love to see people finish projects and succeed and share that with people. And that's kind of what makes me happy, is the fact that that idea and concept went to somebody who had the skills and talents to do it, and they finished it. Now we can celebrate them. And so that's what people like working with me a lot of times, because I don't get in their way. I'm not a micromanager. A lot of times it can be frustrating working with someone like me, because they're like, wait, where'd you go? I thought we were going to work on this together. So, and we're not. I'll motivate you and encourage you, but I'm not going to be working on it with you. So that's just one of
Yeah.
those things. And a lot of my other leaders, they love it because they know I'm not going to be in their way, and they get to be who they are.
Yeah.
So knowing that helps.
Yeah. So I think, this is where we kind of get into the, what does it take to, build a leadership team? We have to define their roles and responsibilities and expectations. And we really experience that success when each team member understands their positions and the expectations that are associated with it, so they can effectively contribute to the company's goals overall. And then what our job is, and maybe it's working with a collaborator, is to define their role. Like what is it that, and identifying like even their skills, like what skills or knowledge do they have to have? Where are the gaps? Do we need to hire or do we need to develop these individuals? So really understanding like what is the role, what is the responsibility, what is the expectation for the people on your team? And then also, as you were sharing, like understanding their strengths and how are those strengths going to show up, with their roles, their responsibilities, and the expectations. Like who could be the starter, who could be the finisher, what does this look like? What are they going to bring to the table? Because it's really a team environment that we're talking about creating. It's not just like, hey, you individual over there, you go execute this. It's collaborative and it's us working together. And that's really where the success comes from, and another piece of the puzzle when building your leadership team.
Yeah, and building the leadership team is really, like I've mentioned a couple of times, getting out of people's way and allowing them to do what they're really good at. And that could be the technical side, that could be the people side, that could be the finance side, but making sure that the mission is served. So as long as the mission is being served, then there should be standard operating procedures in any business, especially when it comes to the technical side. But how they follow that SOP, it can all be based on their skills and talents and recognizing that and not trying to shoehorn everyone in. So one of the things that I experienced recently when I was away from my business for about 5 weeks in spring from March until May, right, in the busiest time, my team did a great job. But when I came back, what I was noticing was that we have our org chart, we have our roles, but the strengths and the roles were kind of misaligned, or the expectations. So they were hitting their KPIs, they were hitting their numbers, everything was rolling along, but the expectations that other team members had of that role, because that role is very traditional in other companies. So they said that role does this, but in my company, because we're really, acknowledging and honoring people's strengths, they were hitting the mission, but the role didn't appear the same. The person in the role didn't show up how they were used to or what the expectations. So we had to realign some of the expectations. So that was very interesting to see, because it's like, well, we're hitting our goals, the numbers and KPIs, but still something doesn't feel right. And it was just like, people are like, well, typically, like my office manager, she has high empathy and consistency. She's never angry, and she's not a witch about anything. She's very nice all the time. And most people think typical office manager is kind of a harsh, can be hard and can be mean and can be, blunt. But she's not like that, and she still gets things done. So when they're looking for that kind of like, oh, what's the penalty for not getting stuff done? She coaches and guides them. She's not providing a consequence. So they're like, well, usually when I fail, there's some consequence. And, she's like, all right, you failed. Let's take a step back. Who needs to be on your team? What did you do right? What could we do more of that? And people like, it can be a little like, wait, where's the consequence? Where's the lashing? And that she just doesn't manage and lead like that.
Yeah, and I feel like that right there is something that contributes to the culture that you have, to where there's a learning opportunity, not a reprimand. And that can really define your culture. And, I think it would be great for us to talk about the significance of fostering a good culture in your company, because you have a culture whether you create one or not. Like, it is there, it is happening. But if you're intentional about it, then you can have a really amazing culture. And it really, like you're saying, who's on your team, your office manager, she's a person on your team, how she shows up is really going to impact your culture. And I've seen companies to where they have a leadership team, in place, but it's disconnected and there's challenges around it because, interesting enough, the office manager is a tyrant, and it's really kind of tipping the apple cart and, creating all this friction, and the owner's going, but they've been here for so long, or, they're a main person in our business and they know so much. And well, what would we do? And so it's like they're kind of dealing with this bad apple, in the apple cart, and it's starting to affect the business and the culture because the business is growing and the rest of the team members that are joining this company are feeling it. So I think, really making sure your leadership team understands your culture and is supporting a positive culture, that's really going to impact the success of your business. Core Growth Strategies provides business growth management solutions through cloud accounting, bookkeeping, and strategic business consulting programs. Our team works with small businesses in lawn care and landscape and trade industries throughout the U.S. We increase our clients' business acumen by creating business performance transparency through financials and strategic advisement based on industry best practices and benchmarks. Our experienced team provides support, guidance, and coaching, thereby allowing our clients to connect with viable data and discover their own solutions. Core Growth Strategies programs and services are designed to get your business from where it is now to where you have always dreamed it to be. Visit us today at coregrowthstrategies.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Don't miss our exclusive limited time podcast special. Just mention promo code GPA Pro to any member of our team during your complimentary consultation, or enter the promo code on our site when you sign up for one of our online programs. That's promo code GPA Pro.
Yeah, and people talk about culture, and they'll go, "Well, it's interesting. We had a party, and we had a cookout, and people get confused about what culture is. Culture is not. It's not an event. It's a habit. It's every hour of every day, whether you're at work or not. And it goes back to the mission, vision, and purpose, plus the immutable laws, and people who live the company immutable laws at work and at home. That's where the culture is created. It's not on a Friday afternoon barbecue. You can put up all the posters you want about teamwork around your office or wherever you want to put it at work, but if you're not truly supporting, people know. They're like, "Oh yeah, that's another poster," or "Kumbaya," whatever it is, but they're not supported when they have a challenge or when they fail, when they make a mistake. It's not treated as a learning opportunity. Like, oh, I know I've made mistakes over and over. I, get a little bit better all the time, but I'm never, 100% perfect. And I don't expect anybody in my company to be perfect. So I know we're going to make mistakes. So let's use it as a learning opportunity. So culture isn't like, I kind of chuckle because, I bought into that too. We'll put the posters up. We'll have our picnics, and the culture's good. And I learned that it was a house of cards. And culture really is where the rubber meets the road. It's how you support your team, how you support their strengths, how you support them, having that best friend at work. Maybe that person isn't the best friend of your life, but at work, you have each other's back and you take care of each other and make sure that, they're supported. So culture is really an interesting subject. And like I said, it's not an event, it's a habit every day.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like the culture it starts from the top and it rolls down, right? So if we're as the owners defining our culture and defining our values and, our vision and our purpose, our mission in the company, and we're sharing that language with our leadership team and their values are aligned, then they can then communicate as well the language of the company, and it becomes, contagious, this positive, conversations, how you guys show up, kind of the decision tree. Like I've had people ask me, how do we create a decision tree in a company? Like, do we have to document everything? And it really starts with the leadership team understanding intuitively the decisions that get made and the actions that we take based off of who we are. And I always say, like, our culture and our values, like that's the fabric of our company. And I like that metaphor because you can tell when something goes against the fabric. right? It creates friction and it's really easy to see. And if we are teaching our leadership team and having those conversations just, in this group, then one, it's going to build trust and it's going to build collaboration. And then it allows them to come together and move the company forward with its goals, its vision, that positive leadership and support.
And having those tough conversations is actually easier in a strong culture because it's not like we're going to take care of everybody and, okay, you've been late 3 times. We've noticed you've been late 3 times. Tell me more about that. Okay, what's going on? All right. So now tell me about your plan to resolve this because we know one of our immutable laws, matter of fact, it's the first one, is to be on time. So that's our immutable law. And if you want to work here, we want you to work here. This is something you're going to have to pay attention to. Are you willing and able to do it? Because we understand if you're not willing and able to do it, we wish you well and we hope you all the best. But part of being, working here is that being on time. So you can have, I call them soft, hard, talks because I'm not threatening them and not screaming at them because when you're angry and mad at your employees, you look like a crazy person. You look like a fool.
Yeah.
So having that, hey, this is what's going on, right? Go right to the choice map. If you're not familiar with the choice map, we'll stick around. You'll hear more about that on another podcast. But what's true? You're late. What's true? That's part of our mutable laws is to be on time. What's true? What's best to do next? And what's best to do next is make a decision if you're going to be on time or not. And so
Right.
You're not beating people with a stick. And I think one of the things I will share about culture, I've seen this, and you brought up the office manager. I had an office manager who was literally holding back the company. And I've seen it, whoever is holding information like a silo and is reluctant to give it up or holds on to things and make sure no one else knows in an organization or a company, that is your anti-culture. That is the person that is holding you back. They're doing more damage every day they stay in your company.
Yeah, and that's like that negative undertone, in your culture, which is why that positive approach in a team culture, it does make them feel safe and supported. It encourages them to take initiative, be creative. It boosts morale. And, it leads to higher engagement in your company and productivity and profitability. Like we've seen it in our companies, we've seen it in some of our clients' companies as well. And if we don't create that safe and supported environment, if anybody was ever raised and they had strict parents or a strict grandparent or aunt or uncle or something like that, or even a teacher, what happened when you were around that teacher? I know what I did. I stood up straight. I minded my P's and Q's, and I made sure whenever they were around, I was behaved a certain way. But as soon as they were gone, I relaxed and I did what I wanted to do because I'm like, oh, they left the room. Like, I feel comfortable. I can be myself. But and they're not going to be as productive when you have team members like that. If you're running a management team or a culture to where you're really cracking the whip, but you can have that accountability and you can have, those conversations and you can have this really good culture where people will jump through hoops of fire for you. Because I as well have also had, people in my life, authority figures or mentors to where I just naturally wanted to do more for them because of how they showed up and the collaboration that occurred in that environment.
Yeah, and old school, they call old school, right? You say this is what you're doing wrong, this is what you have to improve upon, get correct and everything. And right, who wants to be around that all the time if that's all people are doing? I've had coaches that people would have done anything for. And one of their secrets was they acknowledged what you were doing right. They said, hey, I see this, I noticed that. and they would point out when you were making progress, when you had successes, when you had wins. And so you would just do about anything for these coaches. And it's the same thing for my leaders in this company, pointing out and having one-on-ones with our team members and, acknowledging where they're winning, what they're doing right, what they're working towards and making progress towards. They will do things for them that they wouldn't. No one has to stand there. Everyone's standing at attention whether we're there or not, right? And that's why I said it's not an event. Culture is not an event. It's a habit, and it's every day. It's every hour. Just like we want to do the same for our employees, and our team members. I don't want to let my team members down. I always want to make sure that they have a paycheck. I always want to make sure that they have the time, tools, and resources. I don't,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not because they're going to punish me if I don't. I just don't want to let them down. And it's interesting when I see or hear people say, oh, I'm on this crew and I'm the hardest working guy in the crew. And then when I ask them, well, how many times have you pointed out what the other guys are doing right or when they are working hard? And they're so self-involved with never, because I'm always the hardest working person. Well, then he'll always or she'll always be the hardest working person. When you start acknowledging other people's efforts and other people's strengths and other people's contributions, that's called leadership.
Yeah. Yeah. I was, again, just having a conversation about this morning with somebody, but yeah, it is very important. I notice when I acknowledge what my team members do right, and I can even kind of shift that and say, hey, I noticed you do this really well. I would like to see more of that applied to this situation. So it coaches them towards, hey, this needs to be corrected, but not with a negative undertone. And I know with my people, it's very well received. They're responsive and they're like, oh, I didn't think about that before. I think I'm going to try this and see how it works. So we're, as their leader, I'm trying to coach them to see what it is that they do well, how those skill sets show up and maybe how it could be applied in a different area because they're not seeing that. But I could see like, oh, if they do this, I can really see this person growing in this area if they apply this skill or this strength to this area that they're struggling in. So
Yeah, it's an amazing skill. Tom Landry, I can't remember all the exact details, but when he took over the Dallas Cowboys, they were losing, like they had 4 losing seasons in a row. And when he took the team over, when they showed films, he only showed the good plays. He only showed the plays that they did things right. And he's like, see that block? See how good he blocked that? See that hole opened up because the tackle knocked back the defensive end. And so they had a winning team that year, just same players, but their mentality and that the culture turned from this is what you're doing wrong to, hey, this is what you're doing right. Let's do more of that.
yeah, 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 I really like that. It makes leadership easy and management easy because you're just directing and coaching them. So I want to talk a minute about how we identify the right people to be on a leadership team. And we kind of touched on this earlier with, somebody who might have an office manager that's been around for a long time and they're not the right person to have on the leadership team, or you decide to create a leadership team and you look at your main people and you're like, hey, all of these people are going to sit down at the table. And then you do, and you go, oh, this was not a good idea. We've got some conflict or we've got some friction. So I think it's important, like once we start building that leadership team and we start investing in it, because it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's definitely a journey. How do we know who the right people are that's going to sit down at that leadership table? And then, also, what do we do when we discover they're not the right people?
So how do we know that they're deserving of the leadership team, right? What we do is we share our mission, vision, and purpose and our immutable laws. And we basically invite them, do you want to be part of this? And do you want to be part of this more than almost anything else, right? Because
Hmm.
this is going to serve you, it's going to serve them, it's going to serve the mission, their lifestyle, especially in the small business or any business really, or even a nonprofit. Do you want to be supportive of this? And if they answer yes, then they can be a follower. The first follower is really kind of like, if you're the lone founder, the lone visionary, you're saying, this is what I believe, this is where I want to go. Do you want to be part of it? And what's
Yeah.
interesting is if they want to be part of it, you cannot stop them. And if they don't want to be part of it, what will happen is you'll hear money. If I get this amount of money, then I'll join, then I'll believe, then I'll be a believer. But if they're a true follower, especially the first follower, you can't stop them. They'll be talking about the mission. Where are we going? What are we going to do? Let's build this. Let's do this. And they're
Hmm.
talking about where we're going, and they won't be talking about the money. And they also won't go, you won't hear the yeah, but what if? Yeah,
Yeah.
but. I mean, your first followers will be all in and they will just come up with solutions and ideas to keep moving forward. So then you have your first follower and then you have your second follower. And right now that's three, you and your first two followers. And that three's a crowd, right? And a crowd is news. And so then we need to get that out publicly, but we need to treat our first two followers as equals because they are, because without them, we're just alone. We're not even a leader. So then we have our first two followers and we're treating them as equals. Three's a crowd is news. Then we have to get this out publicly and we have to feature the followers and not ourselves because it's really about the followers serving the mission. And why do we feature the followers? Because the first two followers show the next two and three followers how to follow. This is what we do. This is what the mission, vision, and purpose is about. This is our immutable
Hmm.
law. So they're making it about that and not about themselves. Now it's bigger.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, it's slowing down and not just opening up an invitation to everybody to come to the table. And I think it involves some thought and some awareness about how they're already performing or how they're already showing up. And, in my experience, and we've experienced this ourselves in our company, is to where we've had people where they'll say, well, I want this title, or I want, this amount of money, like you said. And, those are not the people who should come to the table, because you'll find there's another agenda going on and it is not your agenda. The other things that we have experienced as well is when they're already pushing back or objecting to our current processes or systems or our way of doing things, and they're not willing to, or have not yet fallen into place with that and supporting that. So they're already objecting to what's in place versus following the process or using the software to the way it's supposed to be used, and then saying, hey, I have this great idea. I think, we could gain more traction, or there might be less friction points if we do this instead. So, but they're still, they're not complying to how we do things. So I think that that's another indication is, do they have the qualities, the skills, or the strengths, or even the experience that we need to set down at the leadership table with us? And no matter how much we want them to be there, it can't be emotional. We have to look at the facts.
And what's interesting is, we've both experienced this. If they truly want to be on that leadership team, they truly want to follow that mission, vision, and purpose, they will find a way. If they don't, they will find an excuse. And that's
Yeah.
really the deciding factor. If they want to be part of it, they will find a way. And if they really don't, they will find that excuse. Just remember that. And it's very interesting. And, I've tried to force people into leadership roles by, being very strategic and very like, this is the SOP and as long as you follow this. But what they didn't do and didn't have the ability to do was show anybody else how to follow, because they were so focused on themselves so they could get their money in that role and
Hmm.
meet all these SOPs and KPIs. They had no ability to show anybody else how to follow. So the most important part of the people on your leadership team is the ability to show others how to follow. It's not even specifically that they know how to do their job. They can be okay at their job, but they have to be fantastic beyond reasonable doubt at showing other people how to.
Right. Yeah, and I think too another piece of this of like who's on your team, looking at well who's already on your team. And one of the decisions, I've had to make in the past is knowing who is missing from our team and then saying this is the person we need to find. And I outlined kind of like what's their skills, maybe some ideas around what their strengths or their qualities are. And we've even been interviewing for other positions. And then we've gotten resumes into where like, this is the person for this role. Like they may be applying for this role and then going through the interview process. But then we're realizing, like, how did they stumble into our company and apply for this role? Like this person is amazing. Like this is what we've been looking for. And just bringing that person in it just really leveled up to the direction we wanted to go with our leadership team. And they're kind of like that missing ingredient, that for our company and the leadership team. And once we brought them on, we knew we made the right decision because that shift that we had been envisioning took place. So sometimes it might be adding the right new person to the company to kind of, fill out those edges of that leadership team.
Yeah, it's a challenge. And when people do get on your leadership team and they're trying really hard, they want to be there so bad and they're getting other people to follow, but they're not perfect. That's okay. They're not going to be perfect. They're learning how to be a leader. They're stepping into this role. They're just discovering their strengths and talents. They're becoming aware of who they really are and who they can be.
Mm-hmm.
So guess what? Just like me, just like you, they're going to make mistakes. They're going to have to reset. But the thing is, true leaders are the people that reset and keep moving forward. They keep going. They don't quit. They don't get bogged down in their failures. What they do is they get excited about the opportunities and the possibilities that lie ahead.
Yeah. And I think too, being aware of who is on your leadership team and making sure that you've got a diverse set of skills, strengths, perspectives. Like we don't want 3 more of us. We don't want 2 of the same manager. We really want that diversity to show up because that is going to make a well-rounded leadership team and help us grow and learn and, really kind of go on this adventure of growing and scaling the company and bringing some new things to the table and some fresh ideas. So I think, just to kind of recap, having a diverse leadership team, people that have experience and they're able to collaborate, with one another. They will listen to one another. They can communicate their ideas and they're not just focused on themselves. It's, not an individual in the room. That's all about themselves, but they're thinking more about the team and the best for all versus the best for one.
Yeah, and if the leadership is competitive, they're competitive in a way where we all win. Whether the company wins, the vendors win, the clients win. They don't think in win or lose, and it's not even just beneficial. Like you get something and I get something. Leaders don't even think in transactional. They think you become more, I become more, we all become more. And as corny as that sounds, that is how we live this is how we run my company, because I truly believe, better individuals make a better company. A better company makes a better community, and people want to live and work and stay in communities that are good and healthy in their culture. So and that's why it can't be an event. It has to be every day, every hour. It has to be who we are. And are we going to slip up? Yes. Are we going to have to restart? Yes. That's what challenges. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. If everything's the same every day, there's no growth. We want to go, oh man, I did that wrong, but here's an opportunity to get it right. Here's an opportunity to do it better and to show people that I'm not a quitter. I believe in myself. I believe in them. I believe in my company. I believe in a mission. It's such a wonderful opportunity. If you can work in a culture like that, it is so exciting every day to be part of it.
Yeah. So before we wrap up today, I just want to share some tips for our listeners who may be, embarking on building their leadership team. So some of the things that we would advise companies is to continuously invest in their leadership team development by providing training, coaching, and opportunities for growth. And this is something that I know Steve and I have both done over the years. And I want to say we've invested over, 3 to 4% of our total revenue back into our team, education, their training, coaching, opportunities for growth. And this has contributed to our success with our team members and their level of engagement. So there's a way that you can track your return on investment with this, which maybe we'll cover in another episode. But definitely investing in your team is important. One of the reasons you want to do that, besides creating those opportunities, but we grow as leaders and we don't want to outgrow our team. We want our team to grow with us. So it's great if you as an owner is embarking on a journey to educate, rise above and learn and grow, but make sure that you're providing the opportunity for your team members, or you are going to outgrow your team members and you're going to miss out on the opportunity of them joining you on this journey.
Yes, you could probably tell by my spirited commentation today that I am a huge believer in growing leaders. Looking back at my, I'm very intentional about having my 20-somethings, 30-somethings, 40-somethings, and 50-somethings, and even 60 and 70-somethings in my company, and making sure that they're having opportunities at each one of those points to develop and learn and grow. But really going into their Clifton strengths and saying, how does this person learn, live, and grow? And plugging into that and making it very individualized so they can move faster and really be who they are at work. And also, you have heard a little bit about the choice map and that learner and judger, and I brought that up. And that's another part of the leadership programs that we have at Green Profit Academy. And the reason that we develop these leadership programs were to support, green industry and other, contractors who are struggling with developing their leadership team, because it's hard for us to do everything in our business. And leadership development is one of those things that can kind of get, even though it's one of the most important things, it kind of gets forgotten and pushed to the side, or maybe it gets done once a year. Maybe we go to an event once a year and we bring our managers, and that's their event for the year. That's what they're going to do, that one-time event. And you heard me say a number of times, culture is not an event. It's a habit. It's every day. So yeah, that's my closing remarks.
Yeah. And the other thing which we touched on earlier was it's essential to establish, that feedback loop within the team and allowing those team members to openly communicate and address any concerns. And one of the things that we do is, and Steve mentioned this, is it's called one-on-ones. So where we sit down and we meet with the team members on a regular basis, and it allows that space for that feedback loop and coaching opportunities to happen, as well as like a check-in of some sort. So, we can send our team members out into the field. We can just have them, work the days away. But unless we create that space for them to connect with their leader or their manager, we're not creating the opportunity for them to communicate openly, feel safe and supported, and also address any concerns that are going on with them. And this will allow you to, close that gap on the team members that you end up losing and you don't know why, because you can address the concerns as they come up and they happen versus they leave and you're sitting there scratching your head, going, why did they leave? I didn't know that was happening. Why didn't they tell me that? So it's easier to retain a good team member and take corrective actions over a long period of time than it is to always have to replace one.
Absolutely. That sounds like another podcast right there. The
Yeah.
one-on-one, how to do great one-on-one. It's vital. All right.
Yeah.
That is pay attention to your team on a regularly scheduled basis. I have 4 one-on-ones scheduled for tomorrow, so I'm excited for that. And we have regularly scheduled one-on-ones between leaders and their direct reports, and I know that they look forward to that one-on-one. But we're definitely going to do a podcast about one-on-ones, and so we can share and help people with that.
Yep. And then the last thing I would just say is make sure that you're evaluating your team's performance and adjust it as needed to continuously nurture their development. So really be intentional about creating, a success path for them. How are they doing? Giving them feedback, having those coaching conversations and being aware of what are their goals? Where do they want to go? What does this look like? And that way you can be intentional about your culture and your engagement and their long-term buy-in in your company.
Absolutely. Yes. Got a lot of work to do.
Yes. It's really less work. It may be work up front, but as you continue to implement this, it's less and less work over time. So
it is way less work. It's a lot of work up front. It seems like, oh no, but once people get on board and once it gets rolling, that's how do I take 5 weeks off at a time away from my business in the middle of spring? It's because I have this leadership team that takes care of things and keeps things rolling. And it was a lot of work up front, but once they get rolling with it, it's a great opportunity for them and the company to grow, and gives you time with your family, your friends, opportunities for hobbies, and enjoying life instead of just grinding 7 days a week, which I did for over 20 years. So this version is much better.
Yeah, it is. It's much easier.
It's a lot easier. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, and we hope you join us again for the next podcast.
Yes. All right. Sounds good.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Green Profit Academy Pros Podcast,
the show that digs into the challenges of growing a lawn care and landscape business while maximizing your profit.